So I'm going to tie the Coleman March Brown nymph today, which is an old school pattern from Carl Coleman from Rochester, New York, and actually Greece, New York. He ended up in Greece. But this is a very old pattern, 50 plus years old. Not sure when Carl invented it, but it was in the early 70s that he taught me how to tie it. So it's an old pattern. So I figured I'd go out and I'd show you that it can still catch fish after 50 years. And it caught fish very, very quickly, actually. A lot faster than I thought I would. So yeah, it's still a relevant pattern after all these years. Stay tuned after watching me catch these fish, and I'll show you how to tie the fly. Beautiful little fish. Got him. Whoop. Nice. Tie a Coleman March Brown nymph by one of my subscribers, and it just so happens that Carl Coleman actually taught me how to tie this fly himself, and I tied him for the store for a number of years, so I've got a long legacy of pretty close to 50 years ago now, actually tying this fly for Carl's shop when he was down in his basement. For those of you that remember that was back in the early 70s. Anyway, we're going to start off with a 2XL long nymph. It's a size 12. This fly's a big fly. You don't need to tie it in a small version. It's not you're not trying to imitate a March Brown with it, even though it's called a March Brown. So a size 12 on up. Size 10s and size 8s aren't too big. You can go as small as a 14, but there's no real reason to. This works great in larger sizes. Anyway, 2X long, size 12 nymph hook. I'm going to add 8 turns of lead wire. Yeah, I'll copper that off. I'm going to start out with 6/0 thread. The good news these days is there's a lot of threads to choose from. We didn't used to have that when we first started this out. You used to tie the whole thing with 6/0. I'm not going to do that. When we tie in the head and thorax, I'm going to go to 8/0 to keep things a little smaller. Anyway, tie a nice base back to the bend of the hook, and any Chinese hackle cape will do. And these are just soft hackle capes. This one happens to be a Prince nymph hackle cape, and a feather that's about that big will give you fibers for the tail. And you want the tail to be approximately just under a hook shank length. And that'll do it right there. Now this is a fly we tie with floss. This is the original stuff that we used to tie with. This pearl marabou, I can't believe I actually found this. I'm not sure Purcell's marabou. I don't think they make this floss anymore, but a brown floss is what you need. And since I didn't have any in white, I'm going to use a uni floss in white. And if you do happen to get the good floss, You might want to break it in half, split it down the middle so you don't get such a thick tie-in. Okay, so you start by tying a piece of white in right here at the base. Put that back. With that, we're going to tie in a piece of brown. We're going to wrap that forward a little bit. And then we're going to cut it off just before the lead. Keep wrapping forward. And go right, basically right almost to the middle of the hook shank, and start tying. Just start wrapping until you get a ball of thread right there, and it'll slip off to either side, but what you're trying to cause is a hump in the middle of the hook. Because this is going to be a pretty fat fly. And once you get a hump made there, to give you a nice, you're going to go back and now you're going to taper that off just a little bit. Go almost all the way to the back, come forward again, go back again, tie right off in here. See if you can get that to be a nice, even taper. And then go to the front. That's pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. Now what you want to do here is you want to spin, twist the floss into a noodle. It's going to go down flat anyway, but if you get it as tight as you can and you start bringing it forward, you'll get a nice even tapered brown body out of this. Unfortunately, Carl passed away in 2023, just last year. At the wake, I met a lot of old friends that I haven't seen in years. Okay, so once you have that nice brown body there, what you need is, and we're trying to get 3 good white ribs in here, but you really need to twist this really tight, or you will not get a white rib. What you'll get is you'll get a brownish rib, and the reason is because the brown color will bleed through the white. Now, when we originally tied this fly, we used lacquer on the body. I'm not going to do that here because it was rod lacquer we used on the bodies for them, and we actually used the color preserver that you would use on your rod thread to make sure that the white didn't bleed as much as it does. You will be, you'll want to tie this and do this next step. And everybody's going to want to use UV curing glue on this. I would not do that. I tried that, and it's not color fast. It does not hold the color. It's not very good. What I'm going to use instead of the old rod varnish is something you can find really easily these days. It's hard as nails. I use this on a lot of saltwater patterns. The nice part about this is it will make a bomb-proof fly for you, and it soaks in very, very nicely. Now the only downside to doing this, and this was the same as the downside to doing it when we used the rod lacquer on these, is that you need to put this aside and let it dry. And that's why I tied the thread off when I did. When you get down towards the tail, if you take your bodkin and you move some of that. Now if you notice that that rib has all of a sudden kind of gotten real small or real light. It will come back a little bit once the hardened nails is dried a little bit. But for the most part, it looks as though it's almost disappeared. It will come back. If you use if you use the UV curing glue with this, you'll get a really nice shiny body. Unfortunately, what you're trying to get for the body with the rib, the rib will just disappear on you. The colors won't hold, and you can see it's disappeared. But once it dries, trust me, it'll come back. The hardest nails are dried, lacquer's dried there, or whatever you're using on it. See how that nice rib came back for us? Beautiful. Anyway, so we're going to go to 8/0, and I'm going to use brown on the front of this fly to tie in the thorax. And come all the way back to the midpoint almost with your thread. And for the wing case here, you can use either duck or goose or turkey, but they all have to be the flight feather. And what you're using is you're using the grayest part you can find of the flight feather. So a slate gray feather, and unfortunately I've used this one up quite a bit, but just take the longest fibers you can find and make sure they're at least the width of a hook gap. Tie them right in on top, and then you can pull the two to compress it just a little bit. The front and the back, just pull it and compress it just a little bit on top. That'll make sure there's no really big gaps in your wing case. Next, we go back to that same soft hackle cape. This one here. This time we're going way down in here to pull out a hackle with feathers that are at the base, should be just about the length of the hook. Now, these are the legs of your fly. You only want 3 turns of hackle on this fly so that you get basically 3 sets of legs coming off of it. Now, earlier on I talked about this is not imitating a March brown nymph. For those of you who know what the March brown nymph is, it's a clinger. It's a very flat, it's not a bulbous nymph at all. Also, it has a lot of gills on it. It's very furry. Probably a closer representation would be a hare's ear nymph. I don't know why Carl named this the March brown. A lot of people said it's a really good stonefly imitation. I think it's pretty good imitation of immature crayfish too. So if there's a lot of crayfish in your area, or you have a lot of small brown stoneflies, this will probably work well. But overall, it's a pretty darn good impressionistic pattern that's an attractor. And I think this fly would catch fish anywhere. Okay. I'm going to take a little pair of hackle pliers and twist the thorax together, which is, this case is 3 strands of peacock herl. Let me feel some hot deer. Line is hidden in this plain. Friends will never be lost as we surrender to their games, as we surrender. Taste been told, so long we grow. The humble hints shake low. Still don't we grow. The humble hints shake low. And then take a pair of hackle pliers and grab a hold of your hackle. And sorry, darn it. Once again, let's try that again. Grab a hold of the hackle. 1, 2, and the third should just be up and over. Oh. Perfect. I'm having a little trouble tying this because the camera's right in front of me here. Well, I shouldn't say the camera, my phone. And it's very close. So, doing what I can. Put your wing case over. Make sure you got your legs sticking out either side. Capture the wing case. Keep some pressure on the front end of the wing case there so it narrows down, and what you should get is a nice even looking wing case like that coming straight across the front. And it's very bushy legs coming out here on both sides. Once again, this is what I think gives it that crayfish type look that I was talking about. Also does a really good job of a stonefly too, because you got have those legs popping out of this stonefly. Okay, and let's cut that off. Yes, I do own a wet finishing tool. When I do work on some of the smaller flies, sometimes I use it to finish off the fly. Six-turn whip finish. Now, Carl used to come in here and clip off the bottoms of the legs. You can. I don't. I don't think it really matters either way. That's got a heck of a buggy look, and it's a really great profile to it. So leaving the legs on the bottom, I don't think matters much. On all the ones I've tied recently, I do that too.